Labour's Ed Balls has told the BBC he could not guarantee that Scotland would be exempt from spending cuts if he became the next Chancellor. But he said he believed policies such as the proposed tax on properties worth more than £2 million would benefit Scotland. Mr. Balls was speaking to BBC Radio 4's Today programme ahead of his party's manifesto launch. The SNP's John Swinney said the revelation demolished Labour's Scottish campaign strategy. Mr. Swinney added, "Jim Murphy can't keep living in his own parallel universe, he needs to own up to the truth which his bosses in London have made clear today and spell out exactly where Labour's axe would fall. I can't say to Scotland that you're going to be exempt from spending cuts in the unprotected areas, but they're sensible and they are absolutely in marked contrast to what the Tories are proposing." Ed Balls, Labour Shadow Chancellor. Mr. Murphy, the leader of Scottish Labour, has said that the party would not need to make further cuts to achieve our spending rules in the next Parliament. Shadow Chancellor Mr. Balls explained that a Labour government would have to make cuts in non-protected areas which would apply in England and Scotland. He went on to say that changes to the tax system, such as the proposed mansion tax rule, would mean Labour could increase spending in priority areas such as the NHS. Mr. Balls said believed that in 2015-16 that would deliver £800 million extra for Scotland, which could then be spent on jobs for young people, more childcare, and the NHS. He said, whether or not the overall Scottish budget is cut depends upon whether or not that £800 million, which is financed and extra, is more than or less than our unplanned cuts, and that will depend upon the scale of the unplanned cuts. I can't say to Scotland that you're going to be exempt from spending cuts in the unprotected areas, but they're sensible and they are absolutely in marked contrast to what the Tories are proposing, because they want to have double the spending cuts next year than last year, and also the SNP, because what we exposed last week is the SNP both won't match our manifesto pledges, but also their fiscal autonomy within the UK is actually fiscal austerity in the UK. It would mean a massive cut to spending in Scotland. Mislead people. However, Mr. Swinney, who is Scotland's Deputy First Minister, said people deserve to know exactly what they are voting for with just a week to go until postal voting begins. He added, "The SNP has been clear in our commitment to ending austerity and investing in our public services. Anything other than the same clarity from Jim Murphy on Labour's cuts plans would be nothing less than an attempt to mislead people in Scotland." Scottish Liberal Democrat leader Willie Rennie said Labour had very little credibility on the economy as it wanted to borrow far too much than is necessary. He added, "Our plan to cut less than the Conservatives and borrow less than the SNP and Labour enables us to commit to building a stronger economy and a fairer society." Liberal Democrats have been first out of the blocks in setting out how we would deal with the deficit. The SNP, Labour, and the Conservatives must be open with people in Scotland about what is needed to deal with the deficit fairly by 2017-18. Labour's manifesto, which was unveiled in Manchester, commits a Labour government to what it calls a budget responsibility lock. This would guarantee that every policy is paid for without additional borrowing and would, in future, require all the major parties to have their tax and spending plans audited by the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility before a general election.